Hello everybody, Marcus Godwyn here with the Shoom Vremeny Noise of Time blog from the heart of St. Petersburg, Russia. I'll carry on directly from where we got cut off the last time when I was talking about changes to the Russian constitution, including the clause that Vladimir Putin can now stand for another term or two, at least, as president of the Russian Federation. This clause, of course, caused a lot of noise in the West, far more than all the other clauses, which, as I was saying in the last blog just before we ran out of space, that, for example, now Russian law trumps various forms of international law within the Russian Federation itself. In other words, Russia has clawed back a little bit of its sovereignty from this very pro-Western, written by American constitution that it had was written for in 1993, 1994. How to say, to explain to Western people and really to Russian people as well, why is Vladimir Putin so popular here? I already mentioned the relatively speaking, economic miracle that's happened in this country in the last 21 years, plus the way the military has been put back on its feet and modernized to a quite astounding extent, in fact. But it's far more than this. Let me start with who is it who actually really dislikes Vladimir Putin here. There's only really one group, and this is West-loving, West-worshipping liberals. Such as Navalny and various other people that the West loves to promote, the BBC and French and German and the CNN and so on, ask into their television studios to comment on Russia. So they hate him. Everybody else, somehow he manages to be accepted and respected by communists. The Communist Party of Russia, of course, would like to be in power themselves. They're kind of opposition. But nonetheless, they will all tell you, yes, we respect Vladimir Putin for this, this and this. Monarchists, one of the political movements and it's not even an ideology really, how to put it, but these people do not have the same access to Russian media and so on as the communists and other mainstream parties do, but nonetheless, they pretty much all support Vladimir Putin. All the mainstream parties, those obviously support him, like United Russia, but also Vladimir Zhirinovsky's party and the Justice for Russia party, I think it's called. They also support Vladimir Putin. So basically, Vladimir Putin has managed to create a situation where most people, at the very least, understand that without him, who is going to fight off all these constant attacks and constant attempts to undermine Russia from within and to goad Russia into some kind of war along the borders with Ukraine or around the other troublesome border areas that the West has always managed to create around the Russian Federation. Does this also, people understand that if not him, then who, when it comes to, he's managed to keep all sorts of in-factions, fighting and so on among various kinds of Russian elites, who remained in power after his immediate purges of the absolute pro-Western puppets who were selling Russia's resources to American energy companies and so on, hand over foot. Until he came to power. This was the first thing he did. We managed to rein all these people in. But other elites, of course, remained in place, and they do not all agree. They do not all have the same ambitions. And many people say a lot of them are still very pro-Western. Even fifth columnists is a very common phrase here, who are just a bit more quiet about it than those who were selling Russia to the West during the Yeltsin years. Does this mean that he is two-faced and just trying to be all things to all people? No, it doesn't. The reasons why people with such differing political positions and philosophical positions support him are because he's virtuoso at running this country in many ways. There are people that have far more nuanced arguments about this could happen, that could happen, and so on and so forth. It's complicated to go into all that, maybe in another blog. Does this mean, though, that somehow, at some point, something's going to have to break? Certain elements of the Communist Party and other so-called patriots who are in fact extremely pro-Bolshevik and are not interested at all in considering Russia as a 1,000-year-old civilization, and even older if we go back to the Kiev Rus. From my personal view is that of course Russia is a 1,000-year-old civilization. It's not just a country, it's a civilization with many nations living here. But as I said before, Russianness is the number one, is the lifeblood of Russia. And its Russianness has been most attacked on all fronts since 1917, which was also, of course, created by the West, basically. So Russia, this is nothing to do with Vladimir Putin simply being two-faced and trying to be all things to all men. If that was the case, he would not have survived 21 years in power here. Is it somehow kicking the can up the road? Because some of these factions cannot, someone is going to have to win sometime, at some point. Either the neo-Bolsheviks will win and Russia will become will revert to being a colony of the West as it was in the 90s, and many say it even is today in spite of various small changes that have happened to claw back a bit of sovereignty, or will Russia continue on the route to sovereignty? So definitely the politics of Vladimir Putin is in a way kicking the can up the road. But while the can is being kicked up the road, Russia has been modernizing enormously in infrastructure, especially in the military, which unfortunately is extraordinarily important because the West is hell-bent on moving in for the kill. This time they want to dismember Russia completely into about 11 pliant different states, as they managed to dismember the Soviet Union, that was basically the inheritor of the Russian Empire, and carve off a whole load of independent states, most of whom had never been independent countries before. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with these people, but it's just a fact that a lot of, especially the Central Asian publics, were never independent countries before. So that is why people here, in general, support Vladimir Putin, and it's really only the Western-loving liberals who basically hate him and come up with all kinds of lies and slanders and so on and so forth to try and destabilise him. But it just doesn't work. As time goes on, unfortunately, this is it's a psychological fact with politicians. No matter how good they are, no matter how, in rare cases, honest they might be or something, people get fed up with them if they've been around for too long. Vladimir Putin survived one very strong moment like this in 2011, when it was announced that when basically President Medvedev said at the massive conference, I think everyone should vote for Vladimir Putin as the next president of the Russian Federation. An awful lot of non-liberal, patriotic Russians were very fed up at that time, and there was a kind of explosion of protests. But these were not the same kind of protests as we're seeing now. The West-loving, Russia-hating liberals and their Western backers were not ready for that. They were completely taken by surprise by it, and it took them 3 to 4 weeks to really get off the floor, shake themselves down and start organising themselves to take over this situation when they came up with this kind of white ribbons and so on and so forth. The power here in Russia survived that moment. It was, in my opinion, a genuine change of mood in Russia. And as I say, the vast majority of people who felt something wrong about that and didn't like it. And I was one of them at the time. That was the first time I realised that I kind of became a little bit Russian, that what happens in internal politics here actually matters to me on an emotional level. At that time, I was still basically zombified. I basically, in spite of having lived here already for 10 years, I basically believed that Western liberal democracy, for all its faults, was the most progressive way, and now I do not believe this at all. Western parliamentary democracies are the greatest scam in history. It's, in fact, it doesn't look like it at first glance, but it's really the greatest tyranny anyone ever invented. But that's a subject which is worthy of a film all by itself. So Putin and his power structure here survived this. Then the West began attacking big time with the putsch in Ukraine and reunification of Crimea, and then power was reconsolidated very properly. Of course, his ratings now are going down somewhat. people are looking for other alternatives. There are more and more, not just on the liberal side, there are more and more alternative patriotic, I'm using inverted commas here because a lot of people are saying, and I think this is true, that a lot of these people are actually fake patriots who are also really, whether they understand it or not, working for Western interests to undermine Russia and return Russia to being a total colony and captive market of the Western powers. So the West is beginning to realise, I didn't talk about this before, but the West is undoubtedly beginning to realise that LGBT politics and gay pride and so on is not going to capture enough youth and enough people in Russian Federation, as it hasn't even in Ukraine, which has become a total puppet colony of the United States and EU ever since 2014. So they are looking for the Communist Party. After all, it was the Communist Party that gave the Bolsheviks that gave the West its greatest ever victory over Russian sovereignty. It's not for nothing that Joe Biden waited 3 days until it was the 7th of November, that glorious day for the Western ruling elites, when finally the destruction of Russia began to take place. The destruction of Russian history, Russian religion started on the 7th of November 1917. But the February putsch in 1917 was also part of the same plan. Communists and people that are addicted to Marxism so will try to tell you, yeah, there was another bourgeois revolution. So no, they were two steps in the same Western-backed putsch. And this Western-backed putsch was able to happen, as I said last week, because so many people in this country at this time didn't believe the evidence of their own eyes and their own hands and their own feet. They believed Western propaganda. The kind of middle class turned against the government, and above all the ruling elites, many ruling elites, including aristocrats and top generals in the army, and even some elements in the Russian Orthodox Church, which was already going through its internal problems at that period and was weakened and didn't even have a patriarch. So we will see what's going to happen now. For the time being, my own personal opinion is simply this, that I don't see any alternative to, any valid alternative yet to Vladimir Putin continuing probably after the next election. I've often said, and many people think I'm mad, but I think he was going to appoint somebody else in 2018. I think he had somebody in mind. The election was on March the 18th in that year, which was the anniversary of the unification of Crimea, and one particular popular candidate here also had their birthday on this date, and everything seemed to have been set up. And I could feel a kind of panic in the Russian media. And the Russian media are largely pro-Western in the sense that they're pro-Bolshevik, anti-Russian Orthodox Church, absolutely anti-monarchist, and largely speaking diminish the value of the 1,000-year Russian civilization and promote values of certain industrialization campaigns that happened under Stalin. And of course the true and here, most importantly, heartfelt event of all, the victory of peoples of the Russian world under the Soviet Union over Nazi Germany during the Second World War. This gets promoted very well on Russian TV, but other aspects of Russian history don't. And I could feel these people were also kind of panicking as if something went wrong. I suspect his entourage and there was enough power who were against this particular candidate being promoted as his successor because of certain monarchist views and so on and so forth. It didn't happen. Maybe that's a pity, maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just my imagination, but I seriously believe that in 2018, 6 months before, he was planning to step down and put another candidate there. I won't tell you who that candidate is. You can work it out for yourself. I've already given you enough information. Well, that's probably enough for today. Speak to you very soon about the situation with Czech Republic and Russia. So please, if you have the opportunity, please subscribe, because this is an incredibly low quality, low tech blog. And I'd like to do a few more things and include some other videos from outside with a little bit of fun, so I could probably start doing this. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.